goodness. Okay, ready? Everything looks like it's fine, which means we are ready to go, folks. Welcome to my studio. My name is Michael Markowsky, and today we're going to be making a painting usually we make paintings by other artists, right? But in our Paint the News series, which you're watching right now, we paint things that are happening currently in the world right now. And one of the big news events happening is there is a tournament of the very best women hockey players, female hockey players out there in the world. It's called the Secret Dream Gap Tour. And the game is about to begin in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. And it's between two teams. Let's just bring this up there on the screen here. Come on. Let's make that a bit smaller. There we go. It's the final between Team Sonnet and Team Bauer, otherwise known as Toronto versus Montreal. And geez, that seems kind of interesting. What a coincidence that Toronto and Montreal, the two best teams of female hockey players, are playing today in a final do or winner-take-all championship game. And then tomorrow, the men are playing. Toronto and Montreal are also playing in the National Hockey League playoffs. So it's like the worlds are aligning, right? The stars are aligning, which is super interesting. If you want to watch that game, and I've got it here right outside of, I can't put it on the screen, otherwise my video will get taken down. But I'm just watching it on my phone up ahead here. But if you want to watch the game, and I would encourage you to watch it, if you got two screens, why not put this one on the television and you can watch me on your computer, or vice versa, because you can watch it on Sportsnet, or you could watch it on Sportsnet on your television, or Sportsnet, the website, right? So that's why I'm watching it on my phone by just clicking that link, and you go right to it. So just real quickly, those of you that aren't aware, the Dream Gap Tour is something that's organized by the Women's Hockey Union, the Professional Women's Hockey Players Association. And so they're assembling all the greatest players in the game today and touring across the country, or across North America, playing all these different games. So they've had a whole bunch in the States. Anyway, so I just want to kind of do a little shout out to that. Where do I want to go next? I want to let you know that we have a Facebook group, a private Facebook group, just for people that are painting along with me. So if you want to join that group, you could send a request to join the group. It's a private group, so we don't let everybody in, just people who are actually taking the class. And you can see people are uploading paintings that they're making. Sweet. Vanya suggesting a nighttime scene of the Vancouver skyline. That could be interesting. That could be a good one here. And people are painting their own things. So here's Josh painting a version of Paul Cézanne. Cool. Wow, look at all this. Great. And you can see some of the paintings that we've done elsewhere. So join the group, upload your version, and then every month or so I do a feedback session where I give people feedback on their artwork. Now, if you go into the video description below, you will see a list of some paintings that we've already made for this Paint the News series. And what you can do is, if you click on the most recent one there, you will see some files, which actually I haven't even opened these files yet. This is my comic book that I'm working on. Let's go to these files. Let's open them up. So if you download those, you can open them up onto your computer as no, I want them both together. No, let's do that again. There we go. And this is what you will see. You will see this image, and this is a photograph, a Getty, owned by Getty Images, taken by a photographer. Abelimages is their moniker. And we are going to make this painting on a canvas. And to do that, what I've done is I've done a tracing of it. I've made an outline which you can print off onto regular photocopy paper. I print mine out onto cardstock just because I like thicker paper, but it doesn't make any difference whatsoever. And so let's do that first. So you got it printed, and then I've got a canvas here. So nope, let's go to this view. Okay. So here's this canvas. This is a 9x12 sized canvas by Arteza. There's 3 brands that I recommend, and if you want to get any of them, they're in the video description below if you want to order the exact one I'm using. Now I've put some gesso over top, and I'm going to give it a quick sanding. And my goal is to get this painting done by the end of this game. So I'm going to be racing just like the women are to get everything done just in the nick of time. Right? You got to play within the whistles, as they say. So here's my canvas. Give it a nice sanding so that it's nice and smooth. And then I'm going to take my printout. We could eyeball this whole thing, but it would take us just that much longer to actually paint it, or it could take a while to draw it out, whereas this just saves us time so we can get right to the painting process. Now, decision is, where do I want to put it? How close to an edge? I think, you know what, I think I might move mine just a little bit to the right, and maybe a little bit further down. Basically right in the middle. The one thing I do want to be a little bit cognizant of is some of these horizontal lines. If they're a little bit they're a little wacky, that can be a little bit distracting. So maybe just before I launch into this, let's just do a double check just to see that things are relatively straight. That looks pretty good. You just don't want it doesn't have to be perfect. It's just always a little bit easier if it's a little bit more accurate, right? And of course we can fix that at any point, but it's always easier to get it right the first time, right? Okay. So what I did is I just took some carbon paper. If you want to, there's a link again below if you want to get the carbon paper. I don't think it's the exact one I'm using, but it should be fine. Carbon paper or graphite paper, they all do the same thing. I got this from a dollar store for, I think, $2. Okay, so now I'm going to just do a very loose outline here. Going to trace the major lines, not every line, not every fold in the shirt, because I'm going to paint over a lot of this very shortly. So I just want to be able to say, okay, here's where the eyes are, here's the tip of the nose, here's the mouth. You know what? I'm not even gonna do the lines on the cage of the helmet just yet, because I'll do that later. That will be probably one of the very final steps that I do. So if I just do it right now, it might be a little confusing to me as I'm painting it. And I want to have a fun time painting it. I don't want to have an anxious time making this painting, so. Okay. So you see I move around a lot while I'm drawing. I don't sort of just get one area done. There's a lot of detail in these skates. I'm probably going to have to take a little bit of that away as I paint it, just because sometimes we don't need all the detail here to understand what's going on, right? So let's come back up here. Now, of course, you could change the numbers on the jersey to your favorite hockey player. You could even transform this into a male hockey player if you want. It doesn't have to be a female hockey player, although obviously that's the point of today's episode for me. But, you know, if you are a fan of maybe you know, Sidney Crosby or Wayne Gretzky or any other player, you could certainly paint their numbers on here. Okay. Although, you know, every player obviously has a slight different body shape and build, even though they have all this padding on there. You know, like for instance, she's kind of a built like a tank. Like she's a strong woman, right? And if you tried to paint Wayne Gretzky in using this her body, you know, Wayne Gretzky was famously a tall and lanky guy, right? And also the game has changed quite a lot. Like the amount of padding that a player like Wayne Gretzky wore back in the 80s and 90s, you know, is very different to what they wear today. If you remember watching hockey as I did as a kid, you know, Wayne Gretzky had this little tiny, it just sort of looked like a salad bowl on his head, right? You wonder why so many athletes of that era have hard times with like concussion-related problems, right? CTE. Okay. So we'll wrap this foot up. I also, you know, one of the images I found here had her signature on it, and there was some advertising on the background here, which I decided just to remove, because not only did it seem a little bit distracting because it was kind of cut off a little bit, and because in the original image, which let's bring that up so you can see what I'm talking about. There's my tracing. So, well, actually, I photoshopped it out. There was another logo here, and I moved her signature in here, and obviously there's this like ZZZ, like what I don't even know what that is, so I took that out as well. Okay. So let's do this stick now. I'm going to use a ruler just to help me do this. And then let's do, I'm going to switch actually to a regular pencil to do these lines so I can go right all the way to the edge. I also made a decision to omit those people that were in the background of the photo, just because they it'll also take us a while to paint all that stuff. If you remember, we did a baseball themed painting, a Jacob Lawrence painting months ago, and we spent, you know, a while painting the background, right? And it is an important part of that picture, but so, you know, if you're, oops, there's some stuff here, so I'm just gonna finish this off. You know, she looks a little funny here like that without her cage, but we'll finish that off, I promise you. And then I save these things and for our daughter to color in. So it's up to you how you want to use this. You could just obviously throw it out or recycle it, but maybe there's somebody in the family. Oh, and I forgot her number, right? So I could even do this too. I guess she does. Oh, all is one. So I don't think anyone will be mistaking this for a legitimate signature by her. Okay, see Paul in the chat says, hello, last year one of the students asked me to paint a hockey player for him. I said okay. The next day, oh, I got locked in from March 16th, 2020. So I'm glad I get to do this today. Yeah, so a year ago, you were going to make this painting, and then we had the whole pandemic hit. So now you're fine. Oh, and I forgot the hockey puck down here. My goodness, Michael. Let's bring that. Oh, it's basically, it looks kind of more like a rectangle, right? There was some stuff on the ice, but we'll take care of that as we go. Okay, so we've got our sketch on the canvas. Let's now start putting some paint on here. So here's my palette, and it's that when I sand these canvases, I often makes my allergies go a little bit wild here. Ooh. So I'll try not to do too much sniffling right into the microphone. So everything that we use for these classes can fit inside of a shoebox, which I think is great because it means ultimately it's also this could be a fairly portable setup for making paintings too, right? So what we normally do is I'll put down a warm yellowish brownish hue onto the canvas at this stage, which is what I think I'm going to do here. You know, that's basically how I've approached most of the paintings that we've done in all the different classes I've taught. And it's going to create a little bit of vibrancy, especially these areas that are just white. If we have a little bit of extra color underneath that, I think it's going to make things look like there's life bubbling underneath the surface, which is what I want. Yeah, I think that'll be enough. I might need a little bit more, but we'll see. So now I'm going to put some water on here. This is the only time I ever use water when I'm painting with acrylics, unless I'm washing my brushes. So, just going to mix this water into the acrylic. Maybe put a little bit more in there. There's lots of action going on in that game. I see it just right outside of the view there, and it's like, whoa! Every time I keep looking, I think, oh, did somebody score? There's lots of zipping around. So if you're a hockey fan at all, you probably are aware that there's not just this women's hockey game going on, but as I said, there's the big hockey playoffs in the NHL happening, the men's league, and I just find it such like an interesting coincidence that both the men's team and the women's teams from Montreal and Toronto are squaring off, you know, in these big, very important hockey games back to back. So. Okay. So the purpose of this is to, there's all sorts of reasons to do this, one of which is to kind of protect the pencil lines we just put down so that they don't smudge or get rubbed away when we paint subsequent layers of paint over it, right? It sort of just locks it in place. And so that's really handy and helpful. It also it kind of fills in all the little gaps, the weave of the canvas, so that there's no white showing through. Not that having white of the canvas showing through is necessarily in and of itself a bad thing, but I always just think it kind of, well, a couple of things. It kind, for me personally, it kind of cheapens the image a little bit. And I think it's hard to really cover all of the, when you're just kind of painting directly onto it. It's like you're like little puzzle pieces, and there's always going to be little gaps in between the puzzle pieces, and unless you're layering right over top of one another. This way, if there's a little bit of gap, then we got this little bit of yellow coming through. I've done other paintings where we've used blue instead of yellow, where we've used red instead of yellow, green instead of yellow, many times using browns, but yellow tends to be what we've used the most commonly. Most artists would use something like this, but maybe a little bit more on the brownish side. But just for the sake of convenience, because this is a beginner's painting class, I just use a warm yellow, right? This, as opposed to like a cool yellow, right? And if you're like, what? Yellow, warm, cool, what? I did a whole how to paint series where we talked in depth about all of this. The first couple episodes would probably be, if this is all new to you, would probably be the most helpful to check out. Okay, so that game, there's 10 minutes gone in the hockey game already in the first period, so that's like 1/6 of the game. Thank goodness there's some, there's a commercials, and there is 2 intermissions, so that gives me a little bit of time to get this whole thing done. It's still going to be a bit of a race. Okay. So typically what I do when I'm making a painting is I usually work from the background to the foreground, right? So the background being, you know, the glass and any kind of people in behind here. I'm going to kind of fake it out and put a little bit of texture in there so it looks like there's something behind the glass, so it's not an empty arena, although up until very recently, most hockey rinks have been totally empty, right? So you could keep it empty if you wanted, but I'll put a little bit of detail in here, including these boards. So currently, I'm not gonna paint just a big red blob back here. I'm gonna put some boards there, but it might be a little bit of an off-white, kind of a gray, I think I'm going to put here, and then obviously white on the ice, but it won't just be pure white. We'll put a little bit, we'll give us some texture, and obviously the yellow. Now this yellow that we just put down is, you know, not too far off from the original, but I'm still going to do something a little bit different to it. Especially, you can see it's kind of marked up, and there's, you know, where the puck hits there and it gets scratched up. And then, so that's the background. Everything I just described is the background. And then the foreground is something we'll do second. So what we'll do is we'll do a pass. We'll put paint on the background. We'll put some paint on the foreground. We'll finish up the background, and then we'll finish up the foreground. Okay, so let's put some paint onto our palette. We're getting close to the end of the warm blue. We're getting, there's still plenty of cool red in there. And this is after, this is our 80th painting. I think I've done a few more than 80 paintings, but just gives you an idea of how many paintings you can do with just this amount of, with these tubes of paint. These are the 250 milliliter size, so they're the larger ones that Amsterdam Paint sells. You might, if you already have paint, you can certainly use the paints that you have. I did a video sort of showing the different types or different brands of paint and my recommendations for which ones you should get if you already have a few tubes of paint from a different brand and you just want to keep it consistent. I show which ones I would buy for each of those brands. Okay, and you can see I like getting paint on my clothes. The other thing that we're going to use is some glazing fluid. We'll do a little bit of glazing just to sort of we can get some of the folds in some of the clothes, I think. That might be really the place where we use the most of it. So, what should we do first? I think let's tackle the background. We're going to tackle the background, but let's do the stuff in the windows there. Windows, behind the glass. Okay, so to get that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix some cool yellow, cool blue, and cool red together. Right? And so what is common between all those? It's the cool, right? We're going to put cool yellow, cool blue, cool red together. The reason why we're going to do that is that way we can get a cool color. And it's going to be cool, like really cool. But it's also cold, color temperature-wise, which means it's going to want to go into the background, right? So let's take some cool yellow and cool blue, super cool, and some cool red. And we'll mix that together. And the resulting color, you're probably like, ooh, this is just kind of a blob of ugly color. Well, basically, I don't know how it looks on screen, but to me, it just looks like a gray, or kind of a purplish gray, right? Which is perfect because we want a color pretty much exactly like that in the background, right? And the reason why it's gray is because these two colors make a really beautiful green, right? Cool yellow and cool blue make like a almost fluorescent green. You can see a little bit of it in there. But when we go all the way across the color wheel to the red, we're literally going right through the neutral core, which means it turns into this grayish color. It loses almost all of its intensity. So let's, I think I'm going to mix just a little bit more of this here. If when you're doing this, like, so for instance, I just put more blue and red in there, and it goes more and more purple, right? So if you want to kind of take the purple out, we'll put a bit more yellow in there, and then now it looks a little bit greenish, right? Let's put a little more blue in there. Oh, and it looks a little bit more bluish. Let's put a little bit more red back in here. Right, and then it kind of goes back to its grayish kind of quality, right? Perfect. I'm also going to mix just a little bit of white in here. You can see now it goes gray, right? And the reason I'm putting that in there is I don't want to make it as dark as possible. I'll do another layer of paint over here shortly. But this just allows me to go darker if I want it. I'm always a little bit reticent to go immediately dark, because then I got to spend time lightening things up if it's too dark. Same sort of thing. I don't want to go super bright or light right off the top. I want to build up to those. And I know there's some other painters who will say the opposite, that you should go immediately to your darkest color and your lightest color, so that you can really establish the extremes. That is, and I see the wisdom in that, absolutely. And you're certainly welcome to explore that method. Let's put a little bit under her arm there. I just find, and that would be my advice for certain painters who continually avoid going dark or light and have a hard time getting the contrasts in. They're always kind of in that middle area of between in the grays. And so that can be kind of a strategy. You might say to somebody, you know what, your next painting, go right to the dark and right to the light. But I don't really have that problem, so I don't tend to do that. Maybe we'll do an exercise where we do something like that. Okay, so you can see it's a little bit splotchy and stuff, but that's actually kind of fine because we're going to actually intensify it later on with that kind of stuff. Okay, so I like that. Before I move on, I'm just going to do the stanchions, these posts. So I'm just going to add a little bit more white to that same color. All right, so I'm just going to take, before I clean my brush here, just take a little bit off. I always do this before I put my paintbrush into the water so that the paint goes onto my rag here rather than into the water, because I'm kind of tied down to the table. But even then, I don't want to have to clean my water all the time. I'd like to be able just to clean it once at the very end of my painting session, so that's what I do. So I just took some white, I just added extra white, more white, into this exact same paint here to make a lighter gray. Notice we haven't used any black. There's no black yet on this painting. This is just all grays. And I'm not going to be too focused on making this perfect. I'm generally not anyway about anything, but that's pretty good. Again, we're going to paint other things over top. We're going to do basically another coat. Maybe, we'll see. Usually I do, but you know, sometimes you nail it the first time around. You're like, okay, great. That saves me a little bit of time. But generally what I like to do is add a couple of layers each time I'm painting, just to add more complexity and color, etc. Okay. So that feels really good. So much so that what I think I'm going to do next is take the same color but add a lot more white to it. And I think I'll paint that in the background behind her. And then maybe even add more white and paint it down here on the bottom. So let's, I'm going to take this brush that I was using earlier. And let's just clean it off a little bit. I don't want it to be perfect. I'm not going to make sure it's super, super clean. And then let's get some white on our brush. We're probably going to need most of it, so we'll just take that. And then I'm just going to dip in here and grab some of that color. And then I'm going to mix it up with this white again. Okay. So right now you're probably like, well, it just kind of looks mostly white, which is fine, right? I don't mind for it to be a little bit more subtle. Now I'm going to mix a bit of glazing fluid in here. I'm mixing glazing fluid in there as opposed to water, which they're going to have similar sort of effects. I'm putting that in there because it's going to create a little bit more of an even coat of paint. Water can kind of sometimes makes things curdle up a little bit, so. Okay. And the other thing too, you can see that I did cover up her signature, but it's still there, kind of hiding a little bit, but it'll come through as it dries. If I'd painted this directly on here without any of that glazing fluid, it would be a lot more opaque, much less transparent, and then it might be a little bit hard to see anything underneath, right? Because white covers up other colors really, really well. Right? It does that better than any other color that you can get. Now, we have had a few discussions in these classes about other kinds of white, because there are other whites that exist out there. Zinc white, which is much less common, but you can find it if you go to an art supply store, but probably usually cheaper, less expensive brands don't often make a zinc white, just because it's much less popular. The zinc white has is much less opaque, and therefore it's more transparent. Okay, I kind of like the way that looks right now. We'll see as it dries how we feel about it, but I feel pretty happy like that. And I think while I'm here, let's paint the bottom with, we're just going to add a little bit more white into it again. So we're just going to do this exact same thing. Ooh, come on. Oh, one last time. So I'll just show you here in a second what I've got. So I just put that blob of paint there. I put a little bit more glazing fluid. I'm just going to rub my brush right into there. So you can see the difference, right, between those two colors. Just mix it in a little bit. So this should have it won't be totally white, which is kind of good. And this is another reason why I don't want to just paint directly onto the white canvas, because just white all by itself is kind of boring, right? I'd like to have a little bit. I'm going to paint. There's some white coming through her skates. You can see. So I'm just covering up some of those pencil lines a little bit. I'm going to put a different color under there at some point, or over there. Cool. Okay. So I'm just going to wipe this excess off my paintbrush, and let's blow dry this so we can see what the next... Oh, I didn't even notice that big... That's a goof, wasn't it? How did I do that? Still got a little bit of paint here, so I'm just going to... Huh. Michael, where did that come from? That's odd. Okay. Oh my goodness, look at that. All that paint just splattered all out onto my painting. So we'll just clean it up. You know, stuff like this happens when you're painting. It's just part of the process. It doesn't always go exactly according to plan. Let's see if I got any paint left. So if that happened, right, I still have this paint. I'm just going to squeak a little bit of my color back in here. This, just a few minutes ago, saying, wow, I was thinking to myself, this could be just fine just as it is. I might not have to do anything to that background. And then I go and spill paint right on it, right? You know, again, stuff like that happens. You know, little mistakes happen. Sometimes that was a pretty big mistake. But, you know, and when they happen, you're certainly encouraged to swear out loud and to curse. But I think it's also just important just to realize that that's part of the process. Like, you will never, ever make a painting in which everything goes perfectly right from beginning to end. I'm just cleaning this up so there's no dripping onto this painting later on. So I only make that mistake once, or that only happens once. Knock on wood. But you know, honestly, that's something. You know, it's interesting we're doing that while we're doing a painting of an athlete, because even the greatest athletes like Hayley Wickenheiser have their ups and downs. Right? Things don't always go exactly as planned. There's always some kind of curveball, to use a baseball metaphor, or you get a penalty, or you goof up and you give the puck to somebody else, or the other team scores. You know, one of the interesting things about hockey is even the best players in the planet play about a third of the game, right? So they're not on the ice all the time. So you have to hope that your teammates can do some of the heavy lifting for you while you're resting on the bench, right? So that's a tea time. Okay, so they're at the first intermission. Michael, whew, that game's going fast. So what should we do next? So we got our... actually, you know what? Let's do a few things here. I want to do the yellow, and I want to do some cold blue back there. So I'm going to take a blue, this cold blue. I'm going to take a bit of warm blue as well and mix this here. I'm going to take some cool yellow and cool red again so that I can make a dark color. Kind of like my gray, right? But this time I had way more blue in it. All right, so that's why I didn't go this color, because I added some of this blue in here. Predominantly blue. And then let's paint this across here. Got a little bit wide on that side, so let's widen this side up. Okay, and then while I'm here, I'm going to take this same kind of dark color, and I'm just going to do a few kind of things here in the background. These are going to be like people's bodies and that kind of things. You see how I'm just kind of keeping it pretty loose. In fact, I'm just going to take a slightly different color. Maybe I'll add a little bit of this red in here. I'm just going to do the same sort of thing, but maybe with a bit of a different color. Let's get it to do a little more of this. So when we paint over this again, this will be pretty subtle, but it'll just give the look that there's maybe something kind of a little bit out of focus back here. Let's do that. We'll take a bit more yellow. Spots. Okay. So again, we're going to paint stuff, another darker layer over all of that. And we can even, let's say we'll just do a couple of places where it's even, there's more. And you know what, just to kind of help this effect, I'm going to take my blending brush, my mop brush as it's called, and just kind of spiral this around to help get rid of any hard edges. And this will help give it a bit more of that out of focus kind of quality. I like that. Cool. So I'm just gonna let that go into some water. And this blue, let me see. It's gonna, since it's kind of transparent, do another quick pass on that. Okay. I think we'll lighten that up as we go shortly, but that's pretty good for right now. Okay. Now, what should we do? I guess this yellow. I think for that yellow, I'm just going to actually take I'm going to take some, let's do this. Take some warm yellow. Maybe I'll mix it into some cold yellow. Give it a bit of a dirtier quality. I like that. You know, there was some other stuff that got mixed in there. So I'm just taking some of the warm yellow because it's a little bit closer. It's kind of in between these two colors, actually. So it's not too far off the color that was there originally. You can see I don't really care if it gets a little bit uneven, because that's sort of like what it looks like in the photo, right? Okay. I might even, the next layer I do, I might actually go full on just the cool yellow. So it's maybe a little bit too warm, but that's okay. So now we've got our background locked in. And you know, I could even see some people just saying, you know what, I kind of like the background. I feel it's kind of done. That wouldn't surprise me if people just left it at that stage. So let's move on to the foreground. So far what we've been doing is putting cooler colors into the background, right? Because cool colors want to go backwards, they want to recede. That's just the way our brains perceive color. And warmer colors want to advance. They want to come closer towards us, right? So we're going to use warmer colors. And, you know, that doesn't just mean that we want to use, well, and yeah, so we're going to use warmer colors. I was going to go off on a tangent, but I got to stay on track. So we got a lot of red here in her outfit. So that red is mostly going to be our warm red. Let's see. So I think what I'm going to do, I'm probably just going to paint this warm red right out of the tube. It's pretty darn close to the color on her jersey. The Team Canada jersey. So I'm just going to paint this directly on here. And you know what? I'm just going to blow dry things. I see things are a little bit shiny, and that means they're a bit wet. So Okay. That's dry. So you can see as things dry, they tend to lose their brightness. They tend to be a little bit more duller. So, and things, they tend to get a little bit more transparent. So even like her signature, which had kind of disappeared, that's come back. You could remember I put some white back here. That's kind of disappeared a little, not quite, but it's kind of significantly mellowed out, I guess. So I'm just going to paint right over everything because I'm going to paint the white on afterwards, and that's just going to, it also saves me some time. Like if I tried to outline all of this here, I would just lose my absolute mind, right? The only thing that do I want to just go right over? Let me think as I'm painting. I'm thinking to myself, should I just paint right over the logo, the crest on her chest there, the Canadian Team Canada logo? Let me think about it. I'm also, since ideally if the paint is nice and wet, you can rest your hand on there fearlessly. This is an old sock I'm going to cut up into a rag, right? So, but I'd rather have that sticking, well, it shouldn't stick to the canvas, assuming I've blow dried it, but let me see. You know what, I'm just going to go paint over all of these lines. I'm just going to go right over all of this. Because remember, white is the most opaque color, so if I paint white over top of this, I might have to do 2 coats of it, but oops, the hockey game just crashed on my phone there. Let's open that back up again. But this is gonna save me significant amount of time than trying to paint around all that fine detail. Notice I'm going right up to and even over top of some of the background colors as well. I guess there is some red on her gloves as well, right? So just carry that through. Okay, so we're into the second period there. We've already got a few minutes into the second period, so woo, but still 0-0. Toronto and Montreal playing for the championship of the secret Dream Gap Tour there. You wonder, like, if whichever team wins this game, does that mean that we'll see a similar result in tomorrow's men's game, the Maple Leafs versus the Montreal Canadiens, or will there be a different result? course, if you're watching this game or this video anytime but today, you will already know the answer to all these questions. So you can see how much more, well, I guess it doesn't show up on camera very well, but it is, I can still see all of my lines very clearly. That's interesting that it just looks like a big red blob. But, there's definitely, all these lines are really easily visible for me. So, if I was painting all this white, however, they would be all gone. So if we take a look, this is where we're at so far. Let's zoom in a bit here and see if... a little bit closer. You can see, there's parts where... Oh, who just scored there? Looks like Team Bauer just scored. Oh. Well done. Okay. So Montreal scored the first goal. Ooh, I don't know, folks. Here's right. Team Bauer is Montreal. Team Sonnet is Toronto. Just for those of you that are tuning in right now. I'm going to try to continue painting because I want to see you watch the highlights, but if you've got the game up on your TV, you're probably watching right now. So everyone, if you're expecting that today's results will also mirror tomorrow's results, that does not bode well for the Toronto Maple Leafs, right? But if you're a fan of the Montreal Canadiens, you're probably very excited, hoping that history repeats. Okay, so next we're going to put some black in. So what we did before is we made a very dark, cool color for the background. Let's make a very dark, warm color for the foreground. All right, so to do that, instead of, let's zoom out here. So to make that darker color, we added cool yellow, cool blue, cool red, right? And we see a little bit of the remnants of it here. Now what we're going to do is we're going to mix warm blue, warm red, and warm yellow together. So let's do this here by the blue. Okay, so let's take that. Let's scoop some blue out. You notice kind of like how I put things in, even though I'm getting them close together, I like to kind of have these little areas where I can, if I want more, I can suck more into the orbit, right? Probably just going to put a bunch of that yellow in there because yellow is the least powerful of those three colors. So right now we've got a good brown. All right, I like this a lot. If we were to use brown, and I'm just taking a quick look in this in the image to see if we want any brown. We will use a color like this for a skin tone, but we'll do that separately for her face. Let's bring more blue into this mixture here, and that blue will darken it down a bit. Let's take a bit more red and bring it in here. Now we're going to deeper, darker brown. Okay, so now we've got a pretty dark brown, but we want to make this more a dark color. Of course, we can just use black. Maybe we will use black right at the very end. But I want to try to make this color out of just the paints that I have to start at least. Right? Remember I said I didn't want to go dark, dark, dark as quickly as possible. So this is one way to help get that. Okay, so probably for the most part on camera, that's probably, I'm going to just take a bit of cool red too. There we go. So we get a nice dark, warm color, or predominantly warm. There's a bit of cool colors in there as well. And I'm gonna need a smaller brush as well. So let's paint this in where it needs to be. So I'm going to use black near the end of this painting, but I might want to leave some of this color that I'm painting right now visible, because there's parts of the dark black areas of her equipment that have highlights, right? There's light hitting them, and it's not just solid black there, right? So this is going to allow me to that freedom to lighten some places up without having to just add white to those areas. Okay. They're approaching the halfway point of the second period, which is also the halfway point of the entire game. And, you know, we're also approaching the halfway point of the painting, I would say. So I think we're doing a pretty good job of keeping up with these fabulous athletes. Playing in the Dream Cup final, or Dream Gap final. Is it the Dream Cup as well? I'm not sure what the championship trophy is. So as we paint this, we're going to lose some of the detail. We're going to come back and, you know, give a little more definition to these fingers, etc. So the primary reason why I wanted to paint today's painting is because I wanted to... one of the reasons I'm doing almost all of the stuff that I'm doing is because I want to share what I know, first of all, and really share what I know for our daughter, who's a 2-year-old, well, almost 2. Looking at my head myself, she's, what is it, 22 months? 22 months old. And I'll show you what I'm doing here. And I want her to be able to have something like this that, you know, that celebrates not just a great Canadian, but a great female Canadian, but also a great female athlete, great athlete in general, obviously. But I want her to be surrounded by inspiring female images and to have people to look up to. And I don't think you can go do much better than Hayley Wickenheiser, this athlete here, because she is acknowledged as literally the greatest player who ever played the sport, the greatest female athlete to ever pick up a skate, to lace them up, as they say. She's won everything in her sport. She's won every award you can imagine. She's been named MVP of the Olympics. She won 4 gold medals, and I think she was a silver medal that time. She was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in Toronto on the first ballot, which is only, you know, other people who've been elected to the Hall of Fame on the first ballot include Wayne Gretzky, you know, and there's very few people who are unanimous choices to go in their first year of eligibility. So that just sort of helps give you some context as to how her peers see her and her contribution to the sport, right? There's very few people. Usually there's some kind of debate. Well, yeah, they were pretty good, but there's, you know, hundreds and hundreds of athletes that we could, hockey players that we could put in. So they debate, whereas there was no debate for her, right? It was just like, yeah, she's going right in. I think we're all agreed that there's very few people that are ever going to come close to her level of ability, so let's just put her right in. Let's even darken down inside here on her jersey. I think that's good. I'm just looking around to make sure I got all the black that I want to put on there. Now, we're going to do the stick in the face here. I'm going to probably just make this a brown stick. I'm just going to go over top of her signature again. Oh, this is Montreal score again? Or is this... Oh my goodness. Montreal's up 2-0. Oh my goodness. Toronto, you got a bigger hill to climb now. The game is... I didn't see what the time left in the game is, but does not bode well. Okay, so that's great. I'm happy with where we're at. So now let's mix a skin tone. And obviously there's her mask is going to cover most of her face, right? So we're not going to spend too much time adding detail there, but and we're going to paint, you know, some white lines where the mask is going to be. But it doesn't hurt to do a kind of an okay job here. Oh my goodness. Oh, Toronto just scored, came right back and scored. Wow, that was quick. Good response. Okay, so we took some warm yellow. I'm going to take some warm red, and we mix this together, and we've got an orange, right? Notice I didn't put as much red on there, so we've got kind of a little orange. Now let's take a bit of warm blue. I'll just mix that warm blue in there. Okay. Now we're going to take some white. tube is out. So you can modify. Actually, you know what? This brown. I could paint her hockey stick real quick with this brown before I change it with some white. So I'm just going to do that real quick. So I just mixed. I'm going to take that same brown and just going to paint. Now again, I know that her stick is not brown in the picture, but because of all of this black going on in here, I have a feeling like if I paint it also black, it just gets a little bit confusing and muddy, and I can decorate it later on depending on how much time I've got. But you know, traditionally hockey sticks have been made of wood. A lot of them are now made of like a composite material, some kind of fiberglass and aluminum and all sorts of different kinds of. They're super light, whereas a wood stick is actually kind of heavy and quite dangerous too. Sometimes when you see those players whack each other with a stick, if you've ever held these things, you know, the new types of sticks are very light, but they're also very strong. You know, they're made of these materials that are meant to give the stick a lot of flexibility when you shoot. Have you ever seen like a slow motion of the, you know, when hockey players shoot the puck, it like the stick almost bends like what does it bend like? Kind of like a bow and arrow, you know, like it bends so that when they go all the way through, it snaps, right, and it shoots the puck much faster than it otherwise might. Okay, so that's cool. Let's go back to, we're gonna put some white on her face, right? So just gonna take this white paint and let's just put this directly in here. Now, some other episodes we've kind of taken a little bit more time to really talk about, like painting skin tones. For this we're going to paint over a lot of this. I'm not going to go into super detailed depths. You see, mostly just white mixed in here. Okay, and then we'll just paint this in there. Added a little bit of extra red in there just to give it a bit more warmth. Just making sure I go outside of these lines a bit to cover up any of that yellow. So right now it is a bit more on the yellowy side. As I'm gonna glaze some things over top of here shortly that are gonna kind of darken it down. We're gonna have some shadows. You know, obviously there's the eyes and nose and everything that are there as well. So we'll get there. So 5 minutes left in period number 2. So ultimately I would say there's about an hour left in this entire game, including intermission. Can we get this entire painting done in the next hour? Well, we're pushing it. I think one thing I just noticed that I didn't do is her skates. So I'm just going to take some of this dark paint that I mixed, and I'm just going to add a little bit of white to it to make it a bit of more of a gray. And then let's oh, and I forgot the puck again. I keep forgetting that puck. So this is just that same dark color that I put on her like skates and pants. Okay. So I'm going to blow dry this, and then I'm going to work on the, well, let me see. What I should do? Yeah, I'm going to blow dry this, and then I'm actually going to do a little bit of work on her face, put her eyes and stuff in there real quick. So one of the things you may notice while I'm blow drying, I'm sometimes picking with my finger in there. Basically all I'm doing is just, if there's areas where there's texture, like blobs of paint, I'm just kind of trying to smudge them away so that helps, it helps, it's like popping a zit or something, to be a little bit graphic, but it helps get any of that wet paint that might be stuck inside out, so that it can help it dry. That way I don't have big blobs of texture or wet paint kind of hiding inside of those areas that if I later on brush my hand over, I could pop the zit and it splatters all over the place, right? So I don't want that happening. So it's a way of controlling things and also speeding up the painting process here. I also, as I just noticed, forgot to do a little bit of white down here on her skates. Okay. So let's come back up to her face here. So right now we've got, this is a bit of like almost a bit of a sicklier kind of color on her face. So we want to, I think, give it a little bit more warmth to it. All right, so I'm going to take this same color. Let's get a bit more red in here. And then let's just This painting, that's not helping. Just wipe some of that away. Okay, I'm going to take a bit of white and add that to this. Oh, you know what? You know what I should do? This is something I always forget when I'm teaching, but I should do all the should do this for people that are. Let's zoom in and let's actually paint. Some details of her face here. So I'm going to paint in That's pretty severe eyebrows, Michael. Kind of looks a little, it's pretty cartoony right now. Again, this is going to be kind of covered with the cage, so I'm not going to bother doing too much here. Her mouth is open a little bit more in my painting than it is in the original. That's okay. So I'm going to blow dry that. And then, you know what, let's just get a little bit darker. Kind of taking a bit of a purple, dark, kind of a brownish purple with a bit of white. I'm going to use to start going into some shadows here. You know, I like this color for her face, her whole face. Let's just kind of put that in there. Keep a little bit of her nose, a little bit less intense there. We're gonna get this where some of the highlights would be anyway. Yeah, I might as well just finish off her face while we're right here, right? Okay, so let's just. So let's get a little bit darker here. Remember, we've got this Oops, where is that on the camera here? So we got this darker color. So I'm going to take this darker color and you know what I'm gonna do for this is I'm gonna let's blow dry this new stuff that I just put down here. We're gonna glaze on her face. Paul says, should the player be a lady? You painted a man image? Yeah, I mean, I'm still painting here, but again, this whole thing is going to be covered by her cage, right? So it's pretty hard to tell what gender she is underneath, under all of that equipment, and it's going to be much smaller, but... So let's zoom out here a bit. So I just took my darker color, this warm color that I used for her pants and stuff. I'm just mixing in this paint as a glaze. Making it more transparent. Let's zoom back in here. Okay. So now let's just start darkening parts of her face. These are all these shadows that are hidden among the from her helmet on her face, right? I think while we're right here, let's use a little bit of red for her lips. Ha! Actually, I like this kind of red in here a bit. Okay, I'm going to go back to my glaze and just go a little bit darker. Okay, and we'll see. I don't want to put. I'm going to put a little highlights on the eyes as we towards the very end. But because I can't, I don't know where I'm going to put the bars yet. I'm not going to. I will save that to the very end. Same thing with like teeth and all that kind of stuff. Because you know we're zoomed in. Like look how it's like the size of my thumbnail. Right, is what her face is. Right. Okay, so let's zoom back out. Gives you a little bit better idea of what a painting looks like when we're not zoomed in as close as possible. Whew, okay, the intensity. I'm trying to do this in real time, right? So the next thing let's do is let's start painting, the background. We're going to move now fully into the background, and we'll finish the background, and then we'll finish the foreground. So I think we might need a little bit more time than the actual game, but we'll see. So let's mix our background color again, and we're going to do that as a glaze. So, oops, some of these paintbrushes are still wet, so I don't want them to dry up on me. Okay. So to mix this dark color again, remember how we did that? We took some cool blue, took some cool yellow, and we get this really nice, bright green, fluorescent green almost. Then we take some cool red, and we mix this in, and all of a sudden that beautiful color gets really muddy. It starts disappearing. All right, I'm going to add a little more blue in here. We got kind of, it's a greenish color. Let's add a little bit more cool red, and that's going to start going darker and darker. Make it a little bit more on the purpley side of things. Put, lastly, a bit more blue into it. So now we got a nice dark color. And we're going to glaze this over top of the background, which we painted before. So this is just going to help unify things. And if you did a little bit too much detail in here that you're not so happy with, this will help kind of hide it a bit. Okay. So now I'm just going to paint this. Over top of... As I said, I'm sure some people were probably pretty happy with the way that looked before. I think it looks pretty good anyway. But this just is a strategy to kind of hide some of the detail a bit. Make it... remember, this is a painting about this athlete, not about the fans in the background, right? We could make a painting about celebrating the great fans of hockey. And we might want to amplify them in there, right? There's people who've done that. So, is this I said the second intermission happening in that game? Montreal's up 2-1. Can Toronto come back and win this game? Yeah, I'm gonna blow dry that, and then I might even put this same glaze over top of the stanchions, these bars. Yeah, I think I'm gonna take this same color and glaze over top of the gray vertical posts or dividers in between the glass stanchions. Just darken them down a little bit. I just don't want anything to be really competing too much with our player in the foreground, Hayley Wickenheiser. So that was a little bit of a kind of a almost semi-transparent glaze. Not quite as dark as I would have hoped. So I'm going to blow dry it and we'll do it again. Maybe I'll mix a bit more paint into it. Make it darker. And you want to blow dry as opposed to just, because otherwise it's going to be, if I start painting on it, I'm going to start scrubbing paint away. It's going to just drive me nuts. Okay, cool. So, let's do this gray here. We'll paint that in. So remember how we did that? We just took the color that we had here and added a lot of white to it. Let's get some white on our brush. And let's take some of this. It's too much, too much. Okay, so it's kind of a nice off gray. Some glazing medium just to thin it out. A nice big stir in here. And then let's paint over here. Yeah, it's a little bit too white, right? So let's take a bit more paint into here. Okay. Okay, I feel pretty good about that. So now let's, we're going to do this and just add more white. So I'm just taking that same paint, but just really mostly white on my brush, and then painting down here onto the ice. I'm so bummed because, you know, obviously the pandemic threw a lot of our plans into disarray, but one of the things that I was really hoping to do would be to go to one of these actual games with our daughter in person. And because they announced all of this tour a couple of years ago, right, probably about this time 2 years ago, I think, and they began them in the States, and the pandemic hit and everything was postponed indefinitely. But I'm so excited. I really want to take our daughter to a women's hockey game, and then if it would be even better would be to get like a jersey and get it signed by one of these great players, and oh, that would be so cool. I would just be kind of starstruck. I would be super excited. I don't know how many years ago it was. They had the FIFA women's soccer game. What was it? They had the Canada versus US at BC Place Stadium. It's a huge stadium here in Vancouver. And a bunch of guys, four of my best male friends and I, we went and saw the women's team play. The Canadian women's team play the American women's team, and it was so cool, so exciting. What's going on here? Why did it pause? Not sure. The game we're now 17 minutes in the third period. I mean, we might be a little bit behind. I had some kind of problem with my phone, so I'm not sure if the game's a little bit further ahead than not. Let's see. Joshua in the chat says, "Hey, Mr. Markowsky, sorry I can't paint today because I'm rewatching the Chibai Shimaster class and going to catch up on the other class that I missed, but I hope you have a good day." Thanks, Joshua. Thanks for keeping me posted. I appreciate it. I hope you enjoy those episodes. Okay. You know, I'm looking at this, and this is a little bit wobbly in behind her. And I have to say to myself, does that matter to me? I don't think so. Well, we'll see. You know, if I want, I can also put some lines back there. Wow, I see the Toronto tied the game up, right? Team Sonnet is now tied with Team Bauer. So Toronto and Montreal tied 2-2 in the third period. Ooh, that's exciting. I love it. It's also very stressful. I find like watching sports to me is just like a little bit anxiety inducing. I don't know about anybody else, but okay. So I'm just going to paint this background here. I'm going to put this ultramarine blue, but I'm just also going to cut it a little bit with that darker color, so it's not totally that blue right out of the tube. So this is my ultramarine blue on the background here. That's pretty good. So maybe that game will go into overtime and it'll give me just a couple extra minutes to finish the painting off. I'm going to finish it regardless, but it's like I'm going into overtime. Okay. Don't worry about it if you go over top of anything like that. It's always easier to get the background sorted. You're happy with the background, paint a little bit over the foreground, and then when we do the foreground, we can paint back over the background area. So it's sort of like we're stitching over top of these areas, right? So now let's do the white on the jersey. So I'll put the white stripes and everything. I guess you can kind of see when I hold my hand over there. You can see now that you can see some of those pencil lines, right? So in case you're wondering, oh, all those lines have disappeared. They are there. I'm going to blow dry this one more time. Okay, so let's get a smaller brush. There we are. Let's get some white paint out. Okay, I'm going to put like pure white paint right all over this painting now. So let me probably zoom in here on her body there a bit. Okay. See how much easier this... Imagine we were trying to outline all this stuff with the red. And even then, the lines would be kind of sloppy. Here I can just go in, paint white right over top of all of this. And assuming you do a good enough job, it can just dramatically improve everything here. I think this brush, which I brought back in September in a set of like brushes, I think 5 brushes for $10 or something. I think it's coming on to its final so it's starting to go a little goofy. So but I mean for I don't know how many 6 months of painting on end up being like a $2 brush or something, to have done all these paintings, the Mona Lisa and Starry Night and dozens of other paintings. Not bad. So again, you don't need to buy... Yes, it makes a huge difference if you're using really nice brushes. I think I need to just... darken that a bit so you can see what I see, right? "12 minutes left in that game, still tied at 2. I'm debating to myself whether I want to outline some of this with black. It would help. It would make things look really nice if they were outlined in black. But it can also take a lot of time. And depending on how good of a job I do, it could make things better or worse. So we will see. Once I get more of these stripes and things painted on here. So to help with this, oh shoot. Didn't realize that that was just an outline. So that's going to get painted red. Speaking of outlining things. 10 minutes left in the third period of the final. Okay. Let's get her gloves. I'm not going to put all like the name brand of the Bauer, even though that's actually one of the sponsors of, it's one of the teams playing today. It seemed like unfair for me to bias it towards Team Bauer. Ooh, I just looked up and almost scored, almost a goal there on the screen. So we can, if there's parts of this that you're not happy with, don't worry, you just paint over them with some red to clean it up. Don't worry, be happy. In fact, this dark area, I'm going to paint white on both sides, and I'm going to paint them red in a bit. So I'm just moving this stripe. You see in the photo that the stripe kind of goes right up into the but for clarity's sake, this is why I always tell people when they're painting from photographs is that just because it shows it in the photograph doesn't mean you have to paint it that way. Because otherwise it could be a little confusing as to what's going on. And I don't want to confuse people. I want it to be as clear as possible what's going on. So sometimes you have to paint things wrong in order to make it look right. Okay. I think that'll be good for right there. Let's go down. Let's go down to the legs here, I think. really try to get these kind of curves so it looks like it's going right around her leg. These stripes, right? If I just put them straight across, it'll make her leg look really flat and strange. So really need these. Use these curves to give this her leg shape and dimension, right? And, you know, I'm kind of playing a little fast and loose with things. You know, if I really wanted to do this accurate, you could see how these stripes kind of, they're not as uniform as maybe the way that I'm painting them. Nike swoosh, I think we'll clean up when we put black in here. So now let's go to these skates. I'm not going to put too much detail in here because I'm going to do that afterwards. I think I'm going to keep it like that because I'm going to paint black and I'll put the white over top. You can also see that I made a decision to lengthen the stick so that it didn't get too confused with all the her skate, right? So instead of the stick ending here, I brought it. Oops, let's move this over here. You can see I moved it down, right? That's just a personal choice that I made to help with the painting, but we'll see in the end how it worked. Now I'm probably not going to do all those details in here. Let's just get the white underneath. Okay, we'll do the lines on her mask later. So let's zoom out again. Okay, so we're doing pretty good. Been painting for just over 2 hours, and this is where we're at right now. I feel pretty good with that. So let's go. Let's start adding You know, before I even go to the black, I'm going to take some of this same, this is, well, a lot of it's dried up. So maybe we'll mix a little bit more. Well, you know what, we're not going to use it too much, but we can take this darker color that we mixed and just kind of, before we even go into the black, I'm going to paint it. You know what? I like this actually. I'm going to paint it around. There we go. Okay. I'm just going to use it to darken a few places. Oh, looks like. Did Montreal score there? Whoa, Montreal scored with 5 minutes left of the third period. So let's zoom in. Oh my goodness, I'm so distracted. I want to watch that game, but I'm going to finish this painting. So maybe I'll leave some of the right side of her helmet like that. Now, they do have, like, you can see her chin is kind of partly covered by the padding. I'm debating to myself what to do there. I might just leave that like that. We'll see. You can see, actually, just before I move on from the helmet, see how I left a little bit of the lighter stuff free there, so that there's, because those are going to be like highlights, so I don't want to go too dark everywhere. And we're going to go darker with the black shortly, but it's kind of nice to leave some of these textures in place. Okay, I think I got to mix more of that. So to mix more of it, I'm going to take my warm blue, warm red, warm yellow. We'll mix this into a blob. Get a nice brown. Let's take a bit of cool blue, bit of cool red even in here. Basically what we're doing is we're mixing the darkest color possible with the paints that we have. Okay. And then I'm going to start mixing some black into this color to start darkening it down. So I won't be at all using any pure black in this painting. I'm only going to use black that has been modified with this color that I've been painting with. And that's how, like, the gloves kind of, they bend there like that, right? Let's go in here. Oh, I did a bit of that already. Oh, I thought Toronto just tied the game, but they were just showing a highlight that was like, whoa, what's going on? Oh, okay. Okay. The women's hockey game seems to move way faster than the men's game. Like, the men's would just be going into their second intermission now, and here we are with just 2.5 minutes left in the third period in this women's game, right? Much less shenanigans and stuff. Montreal just made it 4-2. Oh, looks like they're gonna run away with this game. What I like about this painting so far is, especially, I think you'll see when we put the black in here, it's going to really change things quite dramatically. But we're going to only use it sparingly, right? But even these areas that are a little bit, that I'm painting right now, I know they sort of look, they look kind of pretty much black on camera. But when we put the black next to it, it will be a different story. Like, a men's hockey game usually takes about 3 hours minimum. Here we're about 2.5 hours, and it's almost over. Okay. Did a bad job of centering that, didn't I? Okay. So let's just take a quick look now that I got all that painted in. Uh-oh. Looks like Montreal scored again. The game's not over, is it? Wow, that flew by quickly. Well, we will see what the results of tomorrow's NHL game are. If they're anything like this, the whole city of Toronto is going to have a meltdown. Oh my goodness. Okay, so let's keep on going here. Now we've got, you know, I would be pretty happy with this painting like this. You know, if I wanted to say, okay, game's over, painting's over, you know, there's still more. I probably want to put maybe another hour in here to finish it off. But really, the majority of things are in place. I don't have a lot of complaining to do with what I see in front of me. But there are some little glaring errors or areas that should be touched up. I'm going to do some glazing, which is going to give lots of detail back into the clothing to give it shape. So what I'm doing, remember I painted a few things white just to, because I had the background there, so I'm just going to paint over some of that. I put white here to clean up the where the background had come over top of her outfit. So I'll take care of that, and then boom. What might have looked like a problem at one point is now no more. I like her face like this already. I kind of like, I know it doesn't really look like Hayley Wickenheiser right now. It's because I didn't really intend on you know, trying to get much of a likeness from her, but I kind of like. Like that. So I can use this red now to clean up the white outlines, which is what I'm doing. I can thin them out in places where I was trying to get a little bit of detail and get nice sharp edges. women hoisting the cup. Wow. I can just imagine. I'm not a fan of either Toronto or Montreal teams. Being here on the West Coast and being from Calgary, where this game is actually being played right now, but so I don't have any skin in the game, but I do find, like, I have a lot of friends that are fans of Toronto. And I would say there's pretty much everybody I know who isn't from Toronto or Montreal are cheering against Toronto. Very few people who aren't from Toronto want Toronto to do well at anything. That's just it's sort of like Americans and the New York Yankees, right? If you're living in Boston, and you don't really care about baseball, you're probably not also, you probably know at the very least you're not going to cheer for the Yankees. Okay. So all these little tiny details, cleaning things up. Probably doesn't look too spectacular on camera when I do that, but it's stuff that needs to get done. Okay. So I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to do some glazing on the figure. I'm going to blow dry this, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to start putting some very subtle shadows into the folds of the fabric, and that's really going to help give more dimension. Right now we've, like, again, I'm not unhappy with the painting as it is right now, but I think when you see the glaze come on, you're going to be like, whoa, actually that makes a big difference. That is pretty cool. Actually, you know, before I do the glaze, I think I'm going to go into put black on here first. So, what's this black? This black tube I bought at the same time as all the other tubes, and it feels like I barely opened it, right? Which I would say should be the norm, right? You can use lots of white when you're painting. You can use lots of the other colors, but black is the one color that you should probably be the most, show the most restraint with. And I would recommend, if you're going to make if you want a dark color for anything, try as often as possible to mix that color rather than to use just black right as it is. So what I've done here is I've got my black, this is where I put it, and I'm just going to mix it in here on top of all these other colors. And here's some glazing fluid as well, both to kind of thin it out a little bit and also to incorporate some of this color. Because again, I don't want to, unless I do want to make things darker, but I don't want to make things like totally pitch black dark, because it just, the black sits right on the top of the canvas, right? So I want to avoid putting any black in the background, because then it's going to be like, it'll look like something floating forward, right? So let's look at the photograph. I guess it's pretty hard to see. Let me actually, let's brighten that up just a bit. So I want to think about, okay, the light is coming from the, well, it's coming for in a hockey rink, sort of from all over the place, but it's kind of helpful to try, like when you're painting, to think of where the primary source of light is. And let's just imagine, for our sake, that it's coming from the top right-hand corner. So that's going to mean there's like shadows, very subtle shadows, and we do see them a little bit in the photograph. Like you see down here, we're going to put a little bit of shadow coming off this way. So as I do this, just a little, kind of almost like little subtle wrinkles on her jersey there. And then under here. Keep this side kind of blank. I got a bit of a halo on there, which is cool. Let's get a smaller brush. And then it's just switched over onto WNBA game, it looks like. I don't follow WNBA, so I don't really know who's playing there. Minnesota and somebody. Anyway. So this is great. You probably can't see it on camera just because it's so dark. We have dark on dark, but the darkest parts are under, like it's very subtle. And I can see some people saying, ah, it's too subtle, I'm not going to bother. That's just totally fine. What else do I want to say as we get closer here? We're going to do black on her helmet, obviously, as we get up there. I'm so torn with that face mask. I'm very happy with the way it's. I mean, what do you think? Should I paint the lines on her face mask, the cage on her face mask, or just leave it like that? I'm probably going to paint those lines just so people can see what it looks like. And then people can judge for themselves as to what they want to do in their own paintings, right? Hockey puck. I keep forgetting to give that some love, so let's come down here. Similarly, I'm not painting over all of the hockey puck, just parts of it. Okay. I'm going to need to blow dry this because I want to come up to the helmet. I should have done that first, right? Okay, so again, let's do the helmet, but again, it's something you cannot. It's really hard to convey over the YouTube. But these parts where I can see the darker and the parts that aren't quite as dark, I find super satisfying. Like, it just gives that extra little bit of dimension that helps make things look more and more realistic. I see in the chat, Heidi says, "Hi everyone. Hi Paula, so cool you were painting a hockey player finally." Yes, that's right. That was something that Paula wanted to do for over a year now. Michael, your painting looks like a photo I have been watching on and off, needing to tend to my very sick and eventful cat non-stop. Oh my goodness, that poor cat of yours. I hope your cat makes a full recovery. Okay, so let's zoom in on the face here, because we're getting to that part of the painting, aren't we? And okay, just okay. So this left side is going to be dark. Oops. Try to leave a little bit more daylight on the other side. So I'm also giving just a little bit of a halo on the left side there. Dark right in here. And I'm also going to darken her eyes a bit. so you know, I'm gonna wait till the very end to decide what I want to do with that cage, because I'm just so in love with where things are at right now. Okay. So let's start glazing some very, very light glaze. So let's wash these brushes. We're gonna do the glaze. I may even have to, how much is left here? So I still have this, my warm mixture. So I'm going to take, remember this warm, dark color that I had from before? I'm going to take that, get it on my brush, a lot of glaze. No black in here. We can glaze black in a bit here, but I'm going to use this. I also am just remembering the hockey stick. I want to correct that hockey stick now. Let me see if I can just give it a quick. Quick and dirty. Yikes. Not really the color I wanted, but. I guess this will be the dark side of the hockey stick. I just was like too lazy to put new paint on my palette. Often when I get to this stage of the painting, it's like, what can I do with the color I still have on here rather than adding more new paint? Not, I mean, both because I'm a bit cheap, but also because I just want to, there's just something nice about using even though as the colors get a little muddy, especially when you get into the latter part of the painting, sometimes actually using a bright color somewhere can really draw our attention to those parts. And see this shoulder here. I'm going to paint this red here in a bit. So again, it's just I'm going to use that. Oh, let's touch this up here too. So I'm just going to paint red over these areas because that was the background. Oh, I forgot. I didn't even see that there too. Huh. So let's blow dry that, and then we'll do the glazing. Okay. That's almost a little bit too uniform, so I'm just gonna complicate things. So I mixed up this glazing fluid before, and well, we'll see. It looks a little bit on the darker side, but just in terms of time, we may just we'll use it anyway, I think. So let's zoom in. So I'm going to use this glazing fluid to kind of paint in some of these wrinkles on the fabric, and we can use our blending brush to kind of smooth them in if we want. You see how already it starts to kind of give things some volume. Paint right over the white. See things a little bit more clearly here. Maybe we'll go back. And if it's not dark enough, just let it dry, move on to another part, and then later on, just paint glaze over top of that area, and it will go darker. All right? So this way we can build up a nice layering of color. because this area is going to be under kind of her jersey here, right? So we want to, this area is going to get darker. Even glaze a little bit onto these gloves. I even glaze right over the logo. Darken this down under here. And if you get any kind of streakiness or whatever, you can just take your mop brush and just kind of go over some of these things, and it'll smooth it out and give it a little bit more of a blended quality. Now I've got this is a bit of a purpley color that I'm using as, I remember there's no black in this at all. Personally, this is what I prefer. I'd rather have a kind of a purpley dark than just put black in these areas, or because it's just going to go just really flat. But you do what's best for your painting. So it just starts giving it kind of these folds, that sense of texture and depth. Okay, it might be okay for the top part. Maybe just these gloves. Oops, that's kind of going on thick, so just, since this is under the shadowy area here, it should be darker there. Okay, so let's look at her legs and knees and stuff here. This is the shadow from her pants on her, kind of coming over top of these knee pads. Okay. So I'm not really looking too closely at the original here. I'm just kind of quickly laying some stuff in. Obviously, if you wanted to get closer to the original, just look at it for more clues and answers. Okay. So now as we're down here on the bottom, let's zoom out a bit. And we can now take this and do some shadows on the ice. All right, and just take my mop brush and just soften that a bit. You can see I just left a little gap between the stick and the ice because I want the stick to be kind of like floating over the ice a little bit. Same thing with here. Actually, I'm going to get a bit more glazing fluid and just thin this, get my color out even more so that it's even more transparent. There we go. I'm just going to kind of attach, like kind of creating this kind of slight discoloration for her shadow that's elsewhere on the oops. And let's do just a little bit of work here against the backboards. Alright, so these are kind of where, if we back this out even more, it's sort of, I'm just doing like where pucks hit and skates and everything kind of scrape up against. In fact, I'm going to carry this same thing up a little bit higher here. To the background. It's a super subtle effect that just makes it look like, you know, this is a real place they play real hockey here, and gets banged and dinged up. Let's carry the same thing up even up here. You could just use, you know, any other brush, a little bit larger brush to do this kind of stuff. So if we zoom back out even a little bit more and you see the role that that kind of stuff plays in this picture. Obviously, I think we want to keep more of that down towards the bottom because that's probably where most of the scraping and stuff as it takes place. I'm just going to take some, this is now some pretty close to pure black. So I'm just taking this pure black without any glaze and just going into the parts of the picture that really do need to be as dark as possible. So like these thumbs, that helps people understand what these things are. Let's go down into the skates, the very bottom of these skates here. Okay. So if we darken it, you can kind of see some more of those details. Should we do the signature next? I wonder what color. Should we use the blue? Yeah, I guess there's not really much blue in this painting. I could be tempted to not paint it in there, and then you could hope that you actually run into her and she could autograph it for you. Do I want to put it in there? I don't know, to be honest. And the laces too, I forgot I was going to do a little bit more attention to these laces. So let's do that. Let's put the laces on because I can glaze over top of that as well. Okay. There's one. Let's go to the other skate here. I'm just looking at this. I might actually go over and widen this area now that I see. Okay, so let's just take our black. There you go. Now it seems like that part of the foot is coming over top of the skate and hiding it a bit more than it was before. Okay, I feel like that helps a lot. I can glaze over a bit there too. So I think I see a little bit of confusion happening here with this leg. So I'm going to thin this line out here because this leg is coming too far outward. I want it to kind of push back in towards the skate being further underneath her body here. So to do that, I'm also just making these stripes a little bit thinner. Since we shouldn't see them quite so wide. Okay. And then let's go back to our glaze again. So I'm trying to, again, darken this to push it back. It doesn't look that way in the photograph, but it just looks a little bit too awkward for my taste. So I'm trying to... Let's do some of this detailing on here. So painted that white, and then I'm just going back with the black in between here to thin these lines as much as possible. You know what? I should have curved them. Yes, that's what I should have done. Okay, so let's just take another crack at that. I'm being very impatient here. I should be letting this dry before I go back and paint black over top of it, but yikes. Okay. Try to paint that area out and kind of made things a bit worse. So now I gotta resolve that. Okay, let's blow dry that and we'll darken. Okay. So we're at the, I was kind of maybe spent a little bit too much time in that area. Let's see. Paula says, "Hi Heidi, sorry that your cat is keeping you from painting. My mom used to care for our family dog more than me when I was little. Oh my goodness. I'm sorry to hear that. That's tragic. Hi, Michael. Did your wife give you a haircut since the salon is closed? No, here in Vancouver, the salons, hair salons, barbershops are open. I don't know. Yeah, I went and got a haircut last week. Our numbers here in Vancouver are pretty good. So I'm not sure where you are, but, you know, like in Manitoba, they're still in lockdown. So maybe parts of Ontario as well. Okay. So I should do the white on the mask. It's one of those things that it's just like, I kind of like it the way it is. Do I really need to do it? But I think so. I'm not super. In fact, you know what? I was gonna say, I'm not happy. This foot started to get bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, to the point where it seems maybe a little bit too big. At this point, there's not too much I can do except to maybe enlarge this one a little bit. Now this can be a bit of a fool's errand. But in order to kind of pull some attention from one foot to the, or just at least away from one foot, so that people aren't comparing them side by side, I'm going to give her other foot a little bit and make it a little bit bigger. So let's okay, we have to paint over some of this white. Or some of that yellow, I mean. That feels much better. Have to glaze that though. So I'll just okay. I think that helps. It does mean that I think I do need to do the mask, because now the feet are slightly like 5%, 10% bigger than they were in the photograph. Well, actually, you know what? They're about the same size. But I think just for me, it feels like, oh gosh, I gotta do the mask. I'm so happy with the way it is right now, but the mask I think is a crucial part of this painting. Women's hockey, they do wear masks, unlike the men's game, where most, or at least at the NHL level, they are not. They don't wear facial protection, which is kind of crazy, to be honest. Okay, so let's get some white prepped up here. I'm just going to mix it over top of here, and if it gets a little bit gray, that's okay. I put a little bit of glazing fluid in here just to make it a little bit easier to paint, because that white's been out of the tube for a little while. So it may even be helpful if you want to draw some pencil lines on top of here. So I'm going to get right down and clear some space for myself to do this, because I'm going to have to lean next to the painting. Okay, so yeah, let's zoom in, basically right up close. Zoom. So I'm probably gonna omit some of the lines on the cage. I might not have quite as many on here. For that to dry. I'm just going to put something underneath my hand while I do this. Okay, so if that kind of thing happens, get in there quick, and you can kind of wipe some of it away. Okay. I'll also put one It's interesting they have this. I'm wondering if I want to do an arc like that. That might look a little funny. Right? I felt like if I was to make that arc go up, it might contradict the shape of that helmet. Okay. I think I gotta turn the canvas here so that I can get at these diagonal, or sorry, vertical lines, although now they're horizontal, right? On its side. Okay. Okay. I'm super interested to see other people's paintings and if they decided to put the cage on this mask and how it turned out. Okay. I guess we got to go down a little bit further here, I was thinking. Okay. Pretty happy with that. I could go and add a little bit of glaze even on top of some of that, or highlights on there. I'll have to wait for that to dry a second. I think as that's drying, one of the things I'm just looking at is maybe adding a little bit of highlights onto that helmet. So I'm just taking a bit of that same kind of glaze I use, add a little bit of white to it, and kind of bummed that this didn't. I should have made this a little bit wider. So how can I adjust this? Sort of widening that cage a bit here. Obviously, this is easier to do on this part of the mask than it would be if I was trying to do this right over the center of the face, but did pretty good. Okay, let's just come back in here, tidy that up. I might have to, I'll probably put a little bit more white back in here. Okay. So let's look at it when we zoom all the way back out. Now, I am bummed that we lost the details in her face. I think maybe just to see if we can get a little bit of life back in there. Why don't we see if we get a little tiny highlight on her eyes. Can't quite see what I just did. So let's zoom back in here. Just a couple little highlights on her eyeballs, I think, can kind of help. So let's zoom back out again. So I think what I'm going to blow dry this. We're almost done. I was just trying to decide if I wanted to add any glaze over top of that cage to brighten and darken things down a bit. But you know, as I'm looking at it, I don't know. I don't know. I think I could be done. I mean, I think it looks better in person than it does on camera. When I look at it here, I feel like this is one of the better things that we've done. On camera, I don't think it kind of quite comes across as much, but there is the signature. I don't know if it needs that signature. It might look odd with the signature. It's hard to say. I also feel like I put the signature a little too close to her body. I feel like it should be a little bit here as opposed to right there. In the drawing, it kind of worked well because the end was over here, but now we have an extra, you know, 1/4 inch on either side, so it makes it look bizarrely close to her body. I think it might be good just like that. Okay. So, took maybe a little bit longer than I was hoping, but we got it done. So, it's December 30th, 2013 was when that originally happened. Yeah, I was debating, should I put in there that Montreal defeated Toronto? Yeah, that's good. Huh. Paula says, thank you. See you Tuesday. Happy Father's Day coming. Yes, we got lots of Father's Day stuff coming up here. I'm actually going to be doing a number of Father's Day paintings very shortly. So stick around for that. Okay, everyone. Thank you for painting along with me. I can't wait to see your painting. Please upload it to the Facebook group. If you're not already a part of the Facebook group, I would love for you to join and then share your version of today's painting with all of the other artists that are part of that community. It's a super awesome place for you to go and share your work and get some great feedback from a bunch of other artists that are just like you, that maybe towards the beginning of their painting journeys. And especially if you're going back and you're painting some of the previous classes we've done, because people have been there, done it, and know some of the struggles that were involved in those processes. Okay, so thank you. Let's, I'm going to queue up all of this stuff here. On Tuesday, we're doing it's International Children's Day, so we're going to do a special Peppa Pig painting. I might even do 2 versions of the painting, one for the younger folk and then one a little bit more refined and finished version of that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that painting. Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me. If you found today helpful, there's a link to a PayPal below if you want to contribute a small donation that way. I'd be very appreciated for that. I've just been doing a lot of building. You probably won't see much of it, but underneath here I'm building some shelves and everything to make it a little easier to grab things, and also so I can clean up this huge rat's nest behind me. And all of that is just through the donations that you guys provide. So I'm very, very grateful for your support. If you want to send a check or money order or e-transfer, contact me through the Facebook group, and we will see you in a few days. I'm looking forward to that, and also to see your version of today's painting. And congratulations, Montreal, on your victory over Toronto. And we will see what happens in the men's game tomorrow. Okay. Let's have a good night, everybody. We'll see you very, very soon.